I'm going to hand over to fellow DLNET committee member now, Sean, to introduce this session. Thanks, Sean.
Hi, Shan. Thanks for passing me over. First of all, let me say that was a really wonderful introduction. Just to introduce myself, I'm Sean. I'm an archivist at the University of London, and I also volunteer for DLNET largely in our social media work. So if you're wondering who to blame for all those annoying tweets in the last month, well, then you can largely blame me. So the first part of our conference is titled Reaching Online Audiences, and this will run from 10 to 11 o'clock. And I'm delighted to say that we have two really brilliant speakers with two really brilliant talks. Now, I'm also happy to say at the end of the second talk, we will leave time for questions. But in the meantime, if you hear anything that you find interesting or anything that just catches your imagination, just put a question in the chat and we should have an opportunity to discuss it at the end. So with that in mind, I'm going to introduce you to our very first speaker, Nathan, who is a professor at UP School of Library and Information Studies. And Nathan will be talking about finding your place, programme and platform considerations for different audiences. So with all due respect, Nathan, please take it away.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, Boyda. And thank you very much, Sean, for that introduction. Let me just share my screen. All right. And I'll be talking about the different program and platform considerations for different audiences. Unfortunately, I will be one of those speakers that will be talking about the pandemic and the before and after. But as Sean said earlier, it's not really about what changed, but what changed during the pandemic, but rather how we change our thinking, how we change the way we do things. When we talk about the before times, the times before, whoops. Excuse me for a moment. I completely dropped my mouse there. I think I'm in a panic. When we talk about the before times and what's happening before the pandemic, we have already been doing digital learning. After all, we are a university. Learning is our mandate. We had a typical online presence. We have a website. We had a Facebook and Twitter page. We had a learning management system. And we were really focusing on developing this learning management system because we wanted to shift to paperless education. No more exam papers, no more assignments being handed in physically. We also had G Suite for education, which is now Google Workspace, for document sharing and collaborative working. And most everything we do is done still with the assumption that we get to see our students, we get to interact with people in the face-to-face space. But now here we go. What happened afterward? Everything started in December 2019, where we were told to leave our building. So it's not so much the pandemic that changed our approach, but this. And this wasn't a bad thing. We were told to leave our building because we're going to be starting renovations for a purpose-built building with archival laboratories, an exhibition center, and really specific classrooms for LIS. And because of that, we got split into 3 different places around our campus, which were several hectares wide, and it takes around 20 minutes to travel from each of our offices. And that's what got us started thinking, all right, how could we start shifting things online? How could we start changing the way we do things, especially since we now have a shortage of space? So we had this Valentine's Day lecture come 2020, and we were still using some of the rooms in our soon-to-be new building while things were being torn down on the other wing. But then we had a 75-person room for an event that 200 people expressed interest in. So we now have to figure out, all right, how do we welcome these people when we don't want to turn anyone away? And this is where we first encountered the concept of an RMTP server, and we considered live streaming the event from a different building to another space for people to come together. Unfortunately, while the event was a success, this concept of a hybrid environment failed because we have found out that people don't really like hanging out in a room. Unlike in a movie theater, they don't like staying in a room and listen to someone talk without getting to interact themselves. And we consider this particular event a failure. And so even without a building, we were still focusing on doing things face to face. We were still focusing on having that kind of immediate interaction. These photos were taken the week before lockdown. The one on the upper right in particular was taken the day before we were all told to stay at home. We were preparing for a digitization project of a nationally significant photograph collection in preparation for holding an exhibition for that collection. And we had just set up our digitization workflow. We had our people. The woman on the right is the owner of the collection, and she was talking about the collection to our volunteers. On the bottom of the right, we also have Emily Dembinski from CUNY. She was kind enough to visit us as a visiting professor and was going to give our version of the Jenkinson lecture, the Gabriel A. Bernardo lecture. But again, she had to go home because of the pandemic, which means we now have to think, all right, how do we do things? But more importantly, we had to think, why are we doing things? So here's the cliche, everything changed when the pandemic attacked to misuse the opening sequence from Avatar. You can see from the top graph, that chart shows what we were posting on our YouTube channel. We've had a YouTube channel since 2014, but we used it for internal videos. So if we had meetings, if we had internal events of our students, we posted it there, but those were private videos that only those with the link can access. And then when the pandemic happened, we started posting a lot of events. Now, just to see everyone in chat, I'd love to see who immediately went towards Zoom, towards MS Teams, towards Google Meet when the pandemic happened. So if we can have a raise of hands, did you all just shift to video conferencing as the option? So yeah, it's not everyone, which is great, but a lot of people have this shared experience of, oh, hey, we still need to meet. Let's do video conferencing. But we actively avoided doing video conferencing when the situation changed. One, it's because the university internet was horrible. And in general, all of our stakeholders, our students, our potential learners didn't really have that good of an internet connection, which means synchronous was for that instance out of the question. And that led us to creating a lot of content that was meant to be consumed asynchronously. You've seen the graph at the start of the pandemic, we had almost no content available online. Now at this moment, we have more than 40 produced videos for our different series. We have For the Record, which is a conversation series on archives and records. We had a student-led digital scholarship lecture series where students get to discuss concepts and put their own opinions and spin on it. We have Coffee Break, which is a management conversation series. It's like For the Record, but it's for LAS management. And we have Faculty Room, which is, I'll talk more about that later. It's a casual conversation series involving different faculty members from different fields. As well, we started what we called Webinar Wednesdays. This was a series of live events. Without fail, we managed to put out one live event every month. So it's the first Wednesday of every month. It all started with Edson from Singapore talking about, of course, we use it as an opportunity to talk about viruses and misinformation. And then we had Emily back on this time online talking about critical librarianship. And yeah, we had a variety of topics talking about phenomenology, talking about just last week, talking about representation of autism in comics. So we really use this as an opportunity to develop this kind of content. And what I really want to talk about this afternoon is how we shaped our way of thinking towards this kind of paradigm. And we use three considerations. One is understanding our goals, knowing our audience, and also embracing the content that we are putting out. So starting first with understanding our goals, as a university, we knew that our mission was education, scholarship, and service, the three pillars of academia. And with these three pillars, we were able to identify, all right, what do we want to achieve and who is the content meant to be for? As well, we used the opportunity not of the pandemic, but rather because it was our 60th founding anniversary this year to market the way we change our content to administration, saying, hey, this isn't actually pandemic related, this is anniversary related. And we are doing this not because of the pandemic, but because we are celebrating 60 years of challenging traditions and embracing innovations. Although in reality, the way we changed our mindset was that, all right, we are the national university and we are the center of excellence for LIS education locally. Other universities do not have the same facilities as we do. Other universities don't have the same number of faculty complement. We need to put out content to help them out because their classes are in a worse state during the pandemic than ours is. But we didn't tell them that. We said, hey, this is in celebration of our anniversary. And as well, like Sean said earlier, when the pandemic happened, we are still doing the same things. We are still teaching students. We are still doing consultancy work. We are still doing our research. So we had to be mindful of our limitations because producing digital content is added work. So we had to consider, do we have budget? And the answer is no, we didn't. Do we have the time? And we had to make time for this. We were recording sessions at 9 in the evening. We were talking with people in different time zones, so we had to accommodate that. And of course, we had to convince the institution to let us do this, even though these different priorities were happening and people were all over the place and not able to come to work. And at the end of the day, it's because we were able to identify our audience. And when we are talking about identifying audiences, it's really important to remember that we can never say, oh, we are targeting everyone. That's fine. But it's really important, again, going back to our three pillars of education, to pinpoint exactly who we are talking about when we say everyone. And we are able to split it to different stakeholder groups. So we have students, we have colleagues in the profession, and we also have potential clients for our consultancy work. And of course, having identified those people, we had to find out where they were. We had our existing networks. We had Facebook groups, we had Slack channels. But one of the things I was most vocal about when we started experimenting where to offer our digital content was that we shouldn't infringe on personal spaces. Things like Discord, for example, started marketing itself as a place for education. But for me, I've always seen Discord as a safe space for things outside of work. So I have my fan groups there. I use Twitch, for example, to watch gamers outside of work. And I really had to think, do we want to invade these places, so to speak? Do we really want to put our content up, which is academic related, which is education related, in places where people are meant to be relaxing and don't want to think about work? We also had to consider when people are. This is the activity graph for our Facebook page. And you can see, for some reason, people are no longer on Facebook during the workday, when before the pandemic, when we were looking at our analytics, everyone was active on Facebook during the workday because they were using Facebook for work, which I know it's not meant to be for, but that's what people are using. So that's where we went, because that's where people are. But now people are active in the evening and in the early morning. And we just discovered this because when we held our event last week at 2 p.m., as usual, every Wednesday, we're wondering, why aren't we getting the same number of people and the same level of engagement as we were 2 months ago or 4 months ago, I had a check while I was doing this presentation, and I did this screenshot and discovered, oh, actually, we now need to be releasing content at 7 p.m., at 8 p.m. And that reflects on another one of our pages, where apparently people are now most active on Tuesdays at around 9 and 10 p.m. So we experimented. Yesterday, we released another piece of content. And yeah, we verified that people are most active and people are most engaged at night. So we released it at 7 p.m. and by 9 p.m. and by 10 p.m., a lot of people was watching, a lot of people was liking and sharing it compared to what usually happens when we do it at the usual 2 p.m. time slot that we used to do last year. But as well, we had to take skills and affordances into account. Not everyone has a laptop or a PC. Not everyone is familiar with the use of Zoom. Not everyone is familiar with the use of these different platforms that we just started shifting to when everything moved digital. And of course, people have specific needs that we take into account. So I really regularly monitor these statistics. So some analytics like viewer count and so on isn't really that useful unless you're using it to convince management that, hey, give us more funding. But things like looking at devices that people are using, we see that a lot of our viewers prefer using their mobile phones over their computers when consuming our content, which means we need to tailor our content towards those kinds of devices. As well, we monitor things like age and gender, not so much to look at age and gender, but to see, are we reaching our target audience? So again, our target audience was students and entry-level professionals, young professionals. And by the age ranges that we are seeing, and this is both our Facebook and YouTube channels, yes, we are able to reach our students and these new professionals that are trying to get into the field. And finally, to talk about embracing your content, it's really about understanding your collaboration persona. So this is an IBM concept in user design, but it's really that understanding of what are you trying to do? Are you trying to simply inform? Are you trying to engage? Are you trying to collaborate? And what is the time span we are looking at? Because depending on that kind of engagement, you will have these considerations of, oh, do we need constant monitoring? Do we need to just simply put out the content then and let them consume it at their leisure? So we really have those different considerations depending on people's collaboration personas. And of course, we have this amazing chart created by Daniel Stanford discussing immediacy and the availability of bandwidth. So again, it's all about affordances and about, do people have the luxury of spending time during the workday to attend a live webinar or a conference? Do people have the luxury of spending 2 hours watching a recorded video? Or can things be done easier by just posting it in your LMS and or making a website article about it, or even splitting it into different tweets and then putting it out at different times of the day? And at the end of the day, it's a game of compromises. You can never satisfy anyone. And one of the key principles that I have when managing our online events is that we should never let our stakeholders see how the magic works. So this is a screenshot from our event last week. It was a live event talking about autism and comics. We were using Zoom between the speaker and the host, but everything was being streamed on Facebook, on Twitch, and on YouTube. And we were also accumulating questions from Slido. We preferred doing it this way because we were able to do things like flash the question on screen. Although we had this really complicated setup behind it, as you can see from the diagram on the right. But we are able to integrate these different platforms through live streaming and through integrating it via OBS and using Slido to solicitate questions, instead of needing to have 3 different people or even a single person having to monitor the different social media channels and to look at the comments, to see the questions and so on. And also, it's a matter of having that level of analysis that the platform can offer. So for example, we have this word cloud that analyzes themes asked in Slido. And we also have this monitor for Moodle that alerts us if people aren't engaging with the content, and it allows us to figure out, oh, we need to either reach out to this person, we need to look at how can we change the way we are doing things so that they will engage more. So for example, this one, it's on a lesson by lesson basis that we are able to say, are they actually able to read the content, to do the lessons, and so on. I just have a 2-minute clip that I want to show. In the case of For the Record and Faculty Room. Faculty Room is in Filipino, but I just want you to have a listen to the tone of the content. So these are just quick clips.
Different forms of records, different forms of documentation are really seen or can be seen as manifestations of power, authority, and even the social realities of having inequalities and injustice.
Maybe just to add to those particular themes, it's precisely because the state or the government and even us citizens, right? We have this anxiety because we can't control or deal with the pandemic. We can't deal with the virus. We know that it's happening, but we feel we feel helpless right next to it. So and the state feels that as well. And a semblance of the issuance of record or the ability to hold a particular piece of paper gives the state, as Ira mentioned, and gives each individual a sense of control, however false it might be.
Ako po yung pumupunta sa kanila na para magbigay po ng kanilang mga kailangan na information resources na tinatawag na at the point of care. So hindi na po nila kailangan pumunta sa library.
Sir Mark, kaya pa?
So the reason I showed that was to point out the importance of tone and the importance of tailoring our content to the specific target audience. You can see from For the Record, the target audience was archives professionals. So it's the archive sector. It's people who are already interested in the principles and who have a familiarity with the concepts that we are discussing. It's basically a bunch of academics sitting down and talking about archives theory and its application to society. Whereas we have Faculty Room, which is a really casual conversation trying to entice people to enter the field. It's targeting students and saying, hey, we're not stuffy librarians telling you to be silent in the library. We're actually fun. We do food challenges. And you can see the difference in tone. And also, it's really important to be able to make your content available and have playlists. Although one of the things that we fail at here is having distinct thumbnails to really attract people. And I think we really should look into improving that in the future. And as well, it's a matter of promoting your content and leveraging the grapevine and having people come in and really share the content and engage with the content. That's really the most important part of things. Of course, you have to balance things out and consider whether things are worth it. At the end of the day, producing digital content should be a part of your day-to-day work. It shouldn't be something that you do as an add-on. And it's really something we had to advocate for and tell administration, hey, we need time, we really need resources to produce this kind of content. So please give us that time, give us the units or change our load to accommodate that. And at the end of the day, it's really important to listen to what your audience thinks. So we always ask people in our evaluations, what did you like least? how can we improve things? Sometimes we can do something about it. So for example, we've got people requesting longer seminars and longer videos. Although sometimes we can't really do anything about it, like, oh, my internet connection was really slow. But that's why we plan for content that they can consume asynchronously, so that, all right, you don't have a good internet connection at the moment, just download it or load the video and then watch it when your internet connection is better. Also, we pay close attention to the use of closed captioning. At the moment, it's not that big of an issue because not a lot of our users use closed captioning, but really it's a matter of not being afraid to try things out. Sometimes your digital initiative will fail. That's part of experimenting. Just try things out, experiment with what works. If your audience likes it, then that's great. If they didn't like it, let's think of something new that we can do. So thank you, everyone, and I look forward to hearing from you all in the Q&A